Hi there, welcome to another Sensei series. Thank you for joining me today. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe, and you can also watch other contents that are on the page. So today I'm going to be talking about finances, majorly living expense when you come to the US. So I've gotten questions such as I'm coming here, do I need to have this whole amount I find on my school's website? I don't have the whole amount, what's gonna happen? Things like that, just questions as regards living expense. So typically when you find out your bill from your school, what they do is that they put the tuition and add it with your living expense. Most times living expense is just an estimate, a rough estimate of how much they think you're going to need for that year or how much they think you're going to need for your program. It does not really mean that you spend that amount. So your living expense will typically include like your feeding, accommodation, books, and transportation and any other thing to just make your lifestyle easy even as you're going to school. Remember that your program most times is going to be a full-time program, so they expect that you have money to be able to cater for yourself even as you're going to school. But then they just make a rough estimate. It doesn't mean that that's how much you spend. And I know that this has scared a lot of people. I remember somebody calling me and saying that he checked his website, his school's website, and this is the amount that is the tuition, and the living expenses almost like 50,000. I'm like, you might not necessarily spend up to that. Most times you would not necessarily spend up to that. My living expense was, I'm sure, running into about $17,000. I don't think I spent more than up to 10k or more than 10k, for my living expense. And that I'll tell you how you're able to do that you don't have to spend all that money. However, when you are going to the embassy, you have to show that you'll be able to, sustain yourself, and that there's that money to be able to take care of you during your period. But that doesn't mean that you're going to spend up to that. So in case you see that, don't panic. Don't be scared. Don't say, I won't be able to spend that. I'm going to be telling you coping mechanisms or, solutions to having to not spend that amount of money. So firstly, what do you even need to know? Are you going to spend that amount of money when you come here? It depends, or no. If you want a yes or no answer, no. If you want, a probability answer, it depends. But there's what determines the amount that I'm going to pay? What determines this estimate? So I want you to first note that if you're on scholarship, that's pretty different, because if it's a fully funded scholarship, everything is taken care of for you, your tuition and your living expense. If you're in a part-time scholarship, depending on the agreement of the person providing the scholarship, they might say they're providing for your accommodation, your books, and everything like that, or they're providing for your tuition, whatever the agreement is. So if you're on scholarship, you're not really included in this. I'm talking to people that might not necessarily be on a scholarship or might be on a partial scholarship. The partial scholarship might only cover for your tuition, and you have to sort out your living expense. So if at any point in time you have to sort out your living expense by yourself, this is for you. What determines how much you're going to spend? Firstly, the school. If you're going to an Ivy League school or you're going to a cream school, the estimation of the living expense is going to be a lot. That's just normal, because it's an Ivy League school. Depending on how the school is, they would probably be more expensive things around that area because it's an Ivy League school. The second thing might be the state where you are. So I am in Ohio, Cincinnati. It's not really that expensive. So when it comes to transportation and feeding and things like accommodation, it won't be as expensive as if you're going to a school in California. Do you understand what I'm saying? The state where you are, the area where you are, and either the bus system or the transportation system, how things are in that state or in that area will determine if you will even spend up to that in the first place. So like I said before, no, you might not spend up to that, or you would likely not even spend up to that. Living expense most times would include your feeding, your accommodation, your books, and transportation. Those like 4 major things, on how to live. So coping mechanisms or solutions. Number one, when it comes to your feeding, there are alternatives for you where you don't have to spend so much money. Remember, this is a way for us to make sure that we're not spending so much money, or for us to know that there are alternatives or ways we can cope with it. So number one is feeding. There's usually a school pantry. Most times, at least in my school, University of Cincinnati, there is a school pantry where you can always come in, schedule an appointment, come in, and you just come out as if you're coming to shop. They might not have everything that you want, but sometimes they will have things. Or, they might have fruits, might have dry foods, pasta, rice, different things, canned foods, toiletries. All you need to do is just come in with your bag, take one out of each of all those things, and then walk out. So if you find out that your school has a pantry, that can be an easy way for you. Just go to the school pantry and save yourself all that money. So in the end, you're not spending that estimated amount that your school put out for feeding, because you're either using the pantry, or there was also a time when I got gift cards from school and to a particular store, maybe like Kroger or Target, to a particular store to buy grocery and things like that. So find out if there are those opportunities or there are things like that for you where you will not have to spend so much money. Secondly too, how do you eat, how do you buy your stuff? Is it that you like to buy everything plenty and then you want to make food in bulk? Some other ways can be to go to a store where you can buy food in bulk, maybe like a Costco store, like a Sam's Club, buy things or buy stuff in bulk, and that you can use a very long period of time. You save money compared to like just stores around you, and you won't end up spending as much money as they said over your feeding. Second thing is transportation. So the first thing I would share about transportation is try to find an apartment that is close to school. If you're able to find an apartment that is close to school, you might just walk to school as opposed to always having to get the bus every day. So if you can find an apartment close to school, you will save a lot of money on transportation, where you don't have to spend money on the bus or Uber or anything like that. But in the case that you cannot find an apartment close to school and you have to use transportation, the bus system in a lot of states are good. In Cincinnati, when I was a student, what I did was, typically the bus fare is $2, right? But if you get a card as a student from your school, your bus fare would be $1, as opposed to paying regular $2. So you might be able to do that. It will cut, at least imagine cutting $1 for the next 1 year or 2 years. Just paying $1 as opposed to paying $2, on every trip. Things like that. So that might also help. So you either look for an apartment close by, you find out about if you have any discount, on the bus system. Being a student, you usually will have, as a student, there are a lot of discounts, there are a lot of student discounts. Find out about student discounts. You're working anywhere, is there a student discount? And as long as you have your card to prove that you're a student, you're good. So if there's this student discount over transportation, get that. Thirdly would be if you have friends that have cars. So I usually say try and make friends on time. Shout out to Asi, my friend from Ivory Coast. We became friends just like maybe by the first or second day of being on campus, because we were just about 3 Africans in my class at that time, and so we became friends with him. And he had a car because he had been here for a long period of time, and so he had a car. And what that helps you to do is there are some places you have to get to. Maybe you want to run an errand, you want to get to a store, you need to pick something up, and you just say, hey guy, can you help me with this? I need to get to this place, I need to do this thing. So make friends early. You might have friends that have cars, and I may be able to either transport you to school or transport you to get any other thing I need to get. In the end, you save yourself cost, or you save yourself money for transportation. Okay, another living expense that would usually be covered is your books. And books can be expensive. I kid you not. Books can be very expensive. Books can go from about $300 and above, depending on what book it is, depending on what edition it is. But there's a way to cope around that, which I did also. There are sometimes books on Amazon for rent. You can rent those books on Amazon at a cheaper price. Obviously you have to return it within a certain period of time, either within the semester or before the end of the semester. So you can either rent books from Amazon. If you don't want to have to buy the book, especially if you might not need it afterwards, just rent the book on Amazon. Another coping mechanism might be, there are usually ebooks, books that you can find online. Typically they might go for maybe 100% less than the regular book, or maybe not 200% less than if you buy a hard copy. So you can go for an ebook. Sometimes you have ebooks that will say you can share. So maybe a book is $60 online. You can have 2 people access the book. So what you just do is get your friend, pay $30 and pay $30, and you save yourself money. That might be another way to get around it. some other time, just the previous edition before the latest edition might be way cheaper. I mean, I've gotten a book before that the previous edition on Amazon cost me about maybe $20 or less. Meanwhile, the new book itself was going for about $300. And what was the change in the book? Maybe just a little addition and all that stuff. And I found a way to just read up on that. Caveat: if you know that there's major change, you're not going to go and get an old edition like 1995 to and there's a new edition of 2022. That one is not good. But then if you think that, you can figure out the little changes that are there, maybe just page numbering or another chapter and things like that, and you can find a way to just read up on that, you might not necessarily have to get the new edition. You might consider that too. But those are ways that I survived, with having to get books, because books can be really, really expensive. The last but not the least, the last is accommodation. Very, very important. Like, this is the first thing you want to get as soon as you get into the country. You want to sort out your accommodation, and a way to cope with that is have a roommate or have a housemate, somebody you can share your apartment with. So this goes back to my different areas, different states determine a lot of expenses. So if you are living if you are going to school in a very city life kind of area, things might be more expensive, so just put that in mind. But however, if you decide to share an apartment, it will cost a lot of cost for you, where you will share the rent, the utility, and any other billings that are coming into the apartment. So most times, having just a roommate for that time, if you feel like you can afford to be alone, all well and good for you, you can do that. But then if you feel like it might be too much for you at that point in time, it might be best for you to have a housemate or a roommate. Secondly, on accommodation might be when you get into the country, you might want to find either like a relative, or if you don't have that, a friend, or a church member or something that you can stay with, as opposed to going to like live in Airbnb or hotel and then spending a lot of money. That will save you a lot of money. I hope this really, really helps you. So you might get to spend a little more when you get in, because of your rent, trying to buy a mattress or a bed, and trying to move around, and just general expenses when you come in. You might spend a little more. Your security deposits for your apartment and things like that, you might spend a little more when you come in. But then as you settle down everything like that, you'll be able to figure those things out. I hope this really helps, because it's going to save people a lot of money. I mean, especially people that are scared when they see the living expenses that their school estimates. Most times you don't even spend up to that. Most times you would not spend up to that. So don't let your living expense scare you. You can do a calculation by yourself, do a rough estimate. If I have a roommate, if I add my food from the pantry, if I can have a friend, all those things, just do your own rough estimate by yourself. You do your rough estimate by yourself, and you see that you won't spend up to that, depending on where you are, what school you are going to. Then just do it, and don't be scared about the living expense. This video I want to do finding jobs as an international student. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, if it's going to be helpful to you, don't forget to share, subscribe, drop a comment. I want to hear from you. Thank you very much. I'll see you next Saturday. Bye.